Welcome, fellow UpLIFTers. My name is Eusha Hasan, and I'm here in Center City on a beautiful Saturday morning with my good friend Christian Rodriguez, who is a current student at Penn Medicine. And we're here to talk about his pre-med journey when he was an undergrad at the University of Pennsylvania. So Christian, tell me a little bit about yourself.
So I'm a first-year medical student at University of Pennsylvania, and I also did my undergrad here at University of Pennsylvania.
Okay, cool. Where are you from?
I'm from Morristown, New Jersey. It's in North Jersey.
Okay, nice. And what initially made you want to be a doctor?
I'd say the initial thing, like probably for many others, was I had kind of a role model in my father, and he is a physician, and kind of growing up I always thought it was amazing just what he did for people, and kind of, walking around town and seeing people come up to him and like thank him, and kind of seeing the impact he had on others. I just always looked up to that, and I thought it would be awesome to be that kind of person.
Oh wow, what kind of doctor was he?
He used to be a heart surgeon.
Okay, nice. Cardiothoracic specifically? Okay, cool. So you got to Penn. I'm sure that was a very exciting time. So when you first got here, what were your thoughts going through your mind on what to study?
You mean as an undergrad? Or?
Yeah, not Penn Med, undergrad.
So I got into the engineering school, and I kind of knew I was pre-med leaning that direction, so I chose bioengineering because it's kind of considered the broad engineering degree. Mm-hmm. And people go do a bunch of different things. People go into consulting, people go into bioengineering. There's a lot of pre-meds, and I just liked that it was kind of like that, wasn't that restrictive, just in case I changed my mind. But also, of course, that it was science focused, so I thought it was a good pre-med major.
Okay, nice. How did your major uniquely strengthen your skills to place you in the best position for the medical school process?
I would say, my major there were a lot of science classes, and so it overlapped well with like the pre-med requirements. Mm-hmm. But beyond that, I'd say it is a good major for kind of making you stick on top of your work and kind of help you make good habits, because there's some classes like computer science which are just a lot of time, and kind of you want to be putting in a little work every day. And I feel like that kind of mindset helped me probably throughout studying for the MCAT, as well as like currently in med school, because that's kind of how you have to do it. Mm-hmm.
So you'd say bioengineering gave you like a good balance between a medical focus and a rigorous workload that kept you on top of things?
Exactly.
Okay. How about what advice would you give for someone who is interested in majoring in something that's not really like medical related at all?
I think that's fine too. I really don't think the major matters too much, as long as you're obviously doing the requirements and building good habits. I'd say that's probably the most important thing, is building good habits. Mm-hmm. Because when you go to med school anyways, like your initial classes, it's maybe for some people it's a review, maybe for some people it's not, but you're going to be re-exposed to material anyways, or exposed to the material, so you don't necessarily need to know the nitty-gritty of genetics coming in, even if they say like they want you to take some high-level genetics class. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because you'll eventually be taking that in med school as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting take. So what extracurriculars did you participate in while you were an undergrad at Penn?
So for me, my main three were probably, I was in a fraternity, mm-hmm. and that was kind of my group of friends and where I spent a lot of my time. And that was important to me because I also lived in the houses, and it was just nice to be part of a community. And then my second main thing was probably club ice hockey, because I played hockey all growing up, and it's such an important part of my life. And it was always great to just do something I love and get away from school and just be in like a team. And that was really important to me. And my third was probably I was a member of the Penn Cares for Kids, which is a volunteer club at the HMS School for Children with Cerebral Palsy. And I was president of that my senior year. And I really enjoyed. That was another nice thing to just get away from Penn's campus and just hang out with people and do something fun.
Wow, very cool. Seems like you were a very productive student as an undergrad. So out of all those wonderful things that you were just talking about, what made you stand out in your application, do you believe?
If I'm being honest with myself, I'd probably just say I had good academics and scores. I don't think my extracurriculars really were anything special. I wasn't a D1 athlete. I wasn't some research god. So if I'd have to guess, it's probably just my hard numbers.
Well, that still got to give yourself credit for that. Let's talk a little bit more about that. What were your numbers, if you don't mind sharing?
I did pretty well in the MCAT. I got a 528, which I was super happy about, which I'm sure did a lot for me. And then I did fine. I think I had like a 3.9.
Wow. So, Christian, you were mentioning all these great activities you were doing as an undergrad at Penn. What traits do you think your activities helped you develop to become a better applicant and, most importantly, a better person in general?
I think an important one for example, like team sports would be dedication, because you're part of a team, you have to show up, you have to put in the work, and because other people are depending on you. And I think that is just, if everyone kind of had that mindset, I think it would go a long ways, because specifically, in the medical field, it's like you have to be dependable, you have to be counted on to do your job and do your job correctly, and that's kind of how team sports work. Like the team can only achieve its goal if everyone's doing their individual part, and I think that's an important lesson to take from that extracurricular. From the fraternity, I would say for that, I don't know about traits, but it's mostly kind of the concept of like having community and having a group, and I think it's extremely important. I'm super about downtime and kind of enjoying life, and even though it's like a stressful process, and I'm sure it's going to be more stressful in the future, I am really I value my relationships with people, and I value my friendships, and I always like to kind of put those at the forefront.
Mm-hmm. So the fraternity was kind of an opportunity to just smell the roses whenever you were just grinding, working.
Yeah, exactly. It was just a nice place to, I lived in the house, so every dinner, watching Family Guy at 6:30 with everyone. It was just a good time.
Awesome. How about your work with doing charitable work with HMS?
That was an awesome activity, because it wasn't like some hospital volunteering thing where you're not really doing anything. That was like a small group of us. We'd walk over near Clark Park, which is a super nice area, it was a super nice school, and we'd just hang out with the kids there. It would be like doing Where's Waldo videos or painting, and just kind of fun arts and crafts things, and hanging out outside. And it was just a super nice time, and I guess it was kind of the same thing what I was talking about the fraternity, just kind of hanging out with people and relaxing, and just kind of, hopefully for those kids too, is kind of exposure to other kids outside of their school, because I know they didn't get much of that. So it was a good time.
Yeah, sounds like wonderful work you were doing. That's a good question. What do you feel you could have done better in your undergrad years? Not everyone's perfect.
I would say I do wish, I had a lot of time, and I wish I had done a little more research and got involved with that, especially, as you go into med school, maybe it becomes more important for your future, and I think I would have liked to have those skills, not necessarily, I wouldn't have wished I did like a stupid project just for the sake of, an application, but I wish I actually got interested and involved in the process to kind of pick up those skills for the future.
Yeah, it's never too late for that, right? As a medical student, have you thought about potential research interests?
Yeah, I'm definitely now. I want to start kind of trying to get involved in research, and I kind of have an idea of like what kind of specialties I may be interested in. So I kind of want to start, reaching out and getting involved in that. As a med student, hopefully, it'll be a little easier to get involved.
Yeah, and you have so much time as an MS1 just starting out. Speaking of specialties, you were mentioning you're thinking about which ones you'd like to enter. What are you thinking?
I'm thinking a surgical specialty, maybe like orthopedics. I think, I don't know, I haven't experienced much, but I think that would be a pretty cool specialty.
I think I'm seeing a connection between the hockey and orthopedics. Is that correct, or?
Maybe. I don't know why I'd be inclined, but maybe being around sports, it could be a factor. It's like the doctors that I've seen, I haven't really had health problems except for dislocations and sports injuries. So it could be due to that.
No, yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's good that you have like kind of you kind of have a good idea of what direction you're going, but keeping options open, since as an MS1 you're only learning like the basic facts. You're not in the clinic yet, so can't really make judgments until then, would you say? So Christian, you're already a few months into your first year as a medical school student, as they call them, MS1s. How's your experience been so far?
I'd say so far I'm really enjoying it because it's a completely different vibe and culture versus pre-med, because you're not worried about getting the hundreds and really excelling. Well, everyone's excelling, everyone's trying hard, but it's you don't have that kind of stress of like what's next, like what do I have to do next to get to the next step, because your first year, right now I'm just enjoying learning the anatomy, and we just started microbiology, and that's super cool, and it's like, wow,
nice.
like, this is actually relevant. Like I used to have strep throat, and now we're learning about the bugs. So right now it's just fun and exciting without much stress, and obviously being pass fail it's nice because you really just focus on learning. You're not focused on being competitive or maximizing every little thing. So I'd say so far I really like it, and like honestly academically it's less stressful and more enjoyable than undergrad.
Interesting. Would you say that you're able to exude more intellectual curiosity as a med student rather than versus undergrad?
That's hard to say, because as an undergrad you're picking what classes you're taking, so you can really go in whatever direction. I took some philosophy classes just because I was interested in that. So I wouldn't necessarily say that, because we all are learning kind of the same things, and we do have a set of classes. But you have time to explore other options, and there's definitely freedom to have intellectual curiosity, because you can take other classes at Penn. I think you get like 3, so you can just, I know people are taking other classes and have interest in other things, and people are involved in a lot of different things with society too. So there is still a lot of freedom to explore other things, and people definitely do it.
Yeah, what's the general course structure at PreMed?
So at PreMed, for Module 1, it's kind of our basic science courses. So
sorry to interrupt, but what is Module 1?
So Module 1 is it's like different modules. I think there's like 5, so it's like basic science, Module 1. Module 2 is like systems, and then Module 3 I think is clinic, and then 4 or 5, or 3 maybe like doctoring, which goes throughout, and then 4 and 5 are like electives. I haven't really looked into it too much because I'm only in Module 1. But I know what Module 1 and 2 are. And so for Module 1, it's like classes like genetics, biochemistry, cell biology. Now we're in immunology and micro and anatomy. And it's kind of, just to get like a foundation, so everyone's on the same page with the basic sciences, so that you're really prepared to jump into the body systems, having like a good foundation and really ready to learn. And Penn's great because we are in the clinics a lot earlier, like 6 months earlier than some schools, because our body system just runs from January to January, and then next January we're in the hospital. So I'm so far really loving the curriculum, and I'm really excited to get in the hospital early.
Awesome. So Christian, congrats on the 528. I'm sure everyone's now wondering, how did you achieve such, I guess, quite literally a perfect score?
Yeah, it's honestly, I feel like it's the same advice no matter where you go. You know, you have to start early, and I'd say about 3 months is a good time. That's about how long I took. And first, I just did a basic content review. So I read through all the Kaplan books, just doing those little, end of chapter questions, just to have like a basic foundation to work with, see where I was at. And then after that, I was doing like a weekly or bi-weekly practice test. I used Next Step, which was really good. And also throughout the week, I'd do the AAMC material. Specifically, the section bank was really good, and I thought was really representative.
Mm-hmm.
So a little harder, so don't be discouraged if you have low section bank. And then towards the end, I did the AAMC full length. I think practice questions are kind of the name of the game, and that is really where for the MCAT you need to be putting a lot of your time, because as far as like science content on the MCAT, it's really not as intense as I feel like people assume, with these 300-page like docs on psychology and sociology. Like, I honestly didn't know it well, and it's a lot of critical thinking. Okay. And it's a lot of being comfortable with it, because even the day of, I would get the paragraph, and I would honestly look at it and be like, this is complete nonsense. Like, I have no idea what I'm looking at. And then the questions really may not necessarily require an in-depth understanding of these super scientific paragraphs. So to people studying, I would definitely recommend practice tests, practice questions, which is the AMC material. Try and do all of that. And then as far as practice tests, I think Next Step was really representative and close to the actual test.
Okay, and Next Step is a organization that provides practice tests?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So would you say that honing in on problem solving, critical thinking skills, and just practicing and grinding the MCAT would be more important than putting in your time for the memorization of certain terms and other concepts?
Yeah. Hopefully you have time to do both, and I'm sure everyone has some time to, of course, do a basic review of the content.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't, worry about knowing everything. And honestly, to me, it was a little stressful, looking at it before I started and being like, wow, I need to be an expert on all of these pre-med classes. And it was hard during the classes, but it's really not like that. If you took your classes seriously, if you studied throughout, and you have a good foundation, then I think doing practice questions is really important.
So essentially, all of the time and effort that you put in for the past few years in your undergrad really does translate towards the MCAT.
It translates for sure, and so it wasn't completely wasted. Maybe Orgo was a little wasted, but other than that, I think it helps. Yeah. And I think in med school helps too. I think having a general foundation is good.
Interesting. So Christian, obviously you know that pre-med is a very hard journey for many prospective pre-meds and current pre-meds as well as other people currently applying to medical school. How did you stick to your guns during your 4 years of undergrad? Did you have a support system? What allowed you to persevere?
Yeah, I do think having a support system is really important. For me personally, I have a girlfriend who was also going through the same thing at the same time. Not at Penn, but she was really, really kept me focused and was kind of, you know, I would have been the lazy one if she wasn't there, like, you know, making sure we did our practice exams, you know, like every week either she would come to Penn or I would go to where she was at Rutgers, and, you know, we'd sit down and we'd do the test, and it was super long and brutal some weekends, and, you know, some weekends after we'd leave and we'd both just be like, this is the worst. But kind of having someone to really keep you on top of it and also to kind of go through it with you, like, you know, it's nice just not being the only one in the thick of it, and kind of, you know, being able to like talk to someone else and be like, yeah, this is pretty brutal, right? And, you know, they're just like, yeah, this is brutal, but
Yeah.
then go do something else and have fun doing other stuff. So I'd say, you know, she was really instrumental in me doing well and kind of keeping me focused, and, you know, making sure I stuck to the plan that I knew was going to work.
Yeah, so you mentioned your girlfriend was pre-med as well with you. How's she doing now?
So she is at Sydney Kimmel in Philly. So we actually live together in this apartment, and it's, you know, the same as the MCAT. I'm the lazy one, and she makes sure, you know, now that I'm doing my Anki and that I'm, you know, doing my lectures, I'm trying to watch The Office by 8 p.m., but, you know, she makes sure 9:30 is the earliest. So
That's awesome that you guys could transfer from being long distance to now literally living in the same city with each other.
yeah, no, it was definitely awesome that it worked out, because, you know, it is hard to get into med school for one person, and for two people to get the same city was a blessing and something we kind of thought may not happen. So it was super great, and I think it's helping me a lot in med school too, as far as just kind of my enjoyment and also my productivity.
Any other support systems you had in your life during the time?
You know, just having like I was saying before, having just like a community and like a group outside of what you were doing for me was super important. You know, in my hockey team and in my fraternity, I was like in my grade the only pre-med and like one of two total, and I actually really liked that because it was just completely separate. You know, most of my time in the house was talking about, you know, other stuff. There's a lot of Warren kids, they'd be talking about finance and, you know, computer science and stuff that I wasn't doing, and that was just nice and refreshing. And it was like just hearing what other people are doing, and like, okay, like this pre-med stuff like isn't the world, you know, this isn't everything. And that was just really relaxing and I think very valuable. I could see how some people would enjoy, you know, being in groups with a bunch of pre-meds, because you can kind of bounce stuff off each other, get advice, but I would recommend to find groups completely distant from pre-med and everything, you know, med school, because it really is, it puts things into perspective well, and it's just nice having friends doing different things.
Yeah, so you would recommend having diverse groups of friends?
Yeah.
Nice. Ooh, good question. What would you say was the most difficult challenge that you had to go through in undergrad, and how did you deal with it?
The most difficult, you know, it's hard to say, because, you know, there's like, you know, freshman year of college, I think for everyone's difficult. So if there's anybody who's just starting, then that's, you know, a massive transition. You know, you're getting accustomed to the college work. You know, Gen Chem is a miserable experience for most people, I assume, and that was hard in the sense of, you know, adjusting, being away from, you know, your friends that you've had since you were a kid. Academically, I would say the MCAT is obviously its own beast, because it was like during classes you're studying for it. You know, you have to go through the weekend grind where your Saturdays morning through afternoon is spent doing those ridiculously long practice tests. So, you know, there are different struggles. There's going to be different challenges. But again, the MCAT was just a small period. Freshman year, you adjust fast, so there's always light at the end of the tunnel, and honestly, it really isn't bad. You know, your Saturday may suck, but treat yourself on Sunday, and you know, so yeah.
Yeah, and it all paid off.
We'll see.
So Christian, what advice do you have for prospective pre-meds or current pre-meds on their undergraduate journey?
So I guess it'd be different advice for those groups. You know, for prospective pre-meds, I would say definitely make sure that pre-med is what you want to do before you get started on the process, because there's a lot of cons to it. There's a lot of stuff you have to give up down the line. There's a lot of sacrifices. So I would say, give it a real thought. Like, this isn't just what you're doing in college. This isn't just what you're doing in med school. This is like a decade plus commitment from the day you start college. So I think that's important, to always weigh the pros and cons, because everything has pros and cons. For people who are, committed pre-meds and who are going through the process, I would say just, take it day by day and just do what you need to do every day. And then everything's manageable. No class is too hard if you put in a little work every day. No research project is too bad if you put in a little work every day. And I think you just enjoy life more if you're not stressed, if you have a good routine, and especially going to med school, having that mindset is really important, because as far as volume, it's more. So having like a good schedule makes it really manageable and stress-free.
So staying disciplined and knowing your intentions. What advice would you give? I guess this would be a little philosophical, but what advice would you give for analyzing your intentions for becoming a doctor? Because that is a big question on people's minds.
Yeah, I don't think it has to be philosophical. I think it's literally as simple as a pros and cons list. It's what is, I guess, philosophical in the sense that you have to ask yourself, what do you want in life?
Mm-hmm.
What do you derive meaning from? What do you derive happiness from? And kind of look at the process to become a doctor and say, how does this fit into there?
Interesting.
I derive a lot of meaning and happiness from my relationships with people, and I understand that sometimes, this journey will impact that, but I also have chosen to not let it impact that in certain ways, and that I've gone home, I've hung out with family a few times already, and that's been totally manageable and totally fine. So I think knowing yourself, knowing what you value, what makes you happy, is kind of the first step in really having a good analysis of if this is right for you.
So Christian, I understand that this question may not directly apply to you, as your father was a physician, but what advice would you have for prospective pre-meds who are FGLI on the pre-med process?
So, my dad has talked about this before with me, because he was born in Cuba, he immigrated here, and he was an FGLI student, a long time ago. He was like the only Hispanic student in his class. And for him, I think the biggest thing was really convincing himself like he belongs there, and that you are just as capable as anyone else, and that the imposter syndrome, like, it may be stronger for you, and you may kind of really look around and say that this is too hard, but there's a reason that you got into whatever college, or there's a reason you are where you're at, and if you get into med school, there's a reason for that too, and you belong there. You're perfectly capable. It's med school, and this whole process is honestly just a result of how hard you work and kind of putting in the work every day. So I think it's important to just have the understanding that you are capable and you belong wherever you are.
All right, and that was an end of a great interview with my good friend Christian Rodriguez. Thank you, Uplifters, for tuning in, and stay tuned for our next video.